The corridor was dim, the lamps low, shadows stretching long across the walls. Jafari's steps were unsteady, his chest tight, his breath coming in sharp bursts. The echo of Malik's voice still rang in his ears. Kidogo, that forbidden name, spoken in a whisper that knew too much. His skin crawled with dread. He did not pause to think. He turned sharply at each corner, his robe brushing against the stone floor, until at last he reached the carved double doors of the king's study. Without knocking, he pushed them open. Senkatara sat at his great desk, scrolls and maps laid before him, the soft glow of lamplight spilling across his dark, proud features. The moment he looked up, he sighed, a deep, weary sigh, his face already hardened with impatience, as though he had grown tired of Jafari before a word was spoken. Jafari saw, and it hurt, but he pushed it aside. This was a man who had once been endlessly patient with him, yet now seemed irritated at the mere sight of him. "What is it now?" the Dark King asked, his voice edged with iron. Jafari's hands shook at his sides, but he forced himself forward, his words tumbling out. "It's Malik. I just saw him. He called me Kidogo, a name no one here should know, a name only my brother used when we were children. How could he possibly know it?" Senkatara leaned back in his chair, brows lifting slightly, but said nothing. Jafari pressed on, his voice urgent. "There is something wrong with him, Senkatara. He frightens me. He is not who he claims to be. Or if he is, then he is changed, twisted. And it is not only me who feels it. Mosi saw things too. He told me Malik stood in the garden at night, staring into the air, whispering to himself. He said he saw Malik in the West Wing, speaking words in a strange tongue. Senkatara, our son is frightened, and so am I. We may all be in danger." His words broke the stillness like thunder rolling over a plain. For a long moment, Senkatara only stared at him. Then, suddenly, he laughed. The sound was sharp, hollow, dismissive. "Danger," he repeated, shaking his head. "You are making things up, Jafari. Do you hear yourself? You sound like a lunatic. Malik has been through torment, years of suffering. He is harmless. It is you who will not leave him in peace." Jafari froze, his chest burning, the dismissal cutting deeper than a blade. "I am not making this up. I am trying to protect you, to protect all of us." Senkatara's laughter faded, and his face darkened, his tone dropping into the cold weight of command. "I will not repeat myself again, Jafari. Leave Malik alone. This is the last time I say it." He rose from his chair, the full might of his presence filling the chamber. He moved toward the door, passing Jafari without another glance. But Jafari caught his arm as he passed, his own eyes blazing. "You are blind," Jafari hissed. "Blind, Senkatara. Open your eyes before it is too late." The Dark King pulled his arm free, his expression like stone, and walked out into the hall, leaving Jafari trembling in the lamplight. The study door shut with a finality that echoed in Jafari's bones. A few days later, Jafari slept restlessly in his chambers, the blankets tangled at his waist, dreams half shadow and half ache. And then something happened. He felt a touch. At first it slipped into the dream as if it belonged there. A hand on his stomach, slow, intentional, fingers gliding across skin as though they had every right, a warmth pressing close. But then his body caught it, strange, wrong, and his eyes flew open. Malik sat on the bed. His grey eyes gleamed in the dark, fixed upon Jafari with a hunger that froze the blood. His hand rested on Jafari's abdomen. Jafari's soul almost jumped out of his body. He jerked upright, scrambling back, heart hammering. "What in the—" His breath broke into panicked gasps. Malik only tilted his head, calm as stone, watching Jafari with a curious smile. "What are you doing here?" Jafari rasped, voice raw. "What do you want?" He tried to lunge for the door, tried to shout for help, but Malik caught his wrist with startling speed and strength, pulling him back. "Relax," Malik whispered, his voice low, coaxing. "If I wanted to hurt you, I already would have." Jafari's panic sharpened to rage. You were touching me while I slept. Were you trying to take advantage of me?" His voice cracked on the words. He felt sick, violated. At that, Malik laughed, not kindly, mocking, sharp. "Do not flatter yourself, Jafari," he said smoothly, leaning back a little. "You're good-looking, and I see why Senkatara chose you. But you're not my type. I like my men, darker." The words stung, but the malice in them stung worse. Jafari clutched his robe tighter around himself, his chest heaving. "Then what in the ancestors' name do you want?" Malik's eyes darkened, his smile fading into something colder. "To warn you," he said simply. "One last time. Leave the palace. Leave Sudan. Go back to Kenya, or wherever you came from. This is your last chance, Jafari. Step aside. Let me and Senkatara rekindle what was ours. What you have is temporary. What we have is eternal." A bitter laugh broke from Jafari, sharp and hollow. "You come into my room in the dead of night to tell me that? Get out!" He swung his legs off the bed, planted his feet firmly on the ground, and shoved Malik hard. The man stumbled, his robe slipping further open. Jafari kicked him toward the doorway with all the fury of his fear. "Out!" he shouted. Malik caught himself straightening, his robe falling back into place. He looked almost amused, as though Jafari's fury were a child's tantrum. At the threshold, Malik turned, his grey eyes glinting with something that did not belong to any man. "Bad things will happen now that you've refused me," he said softly, each word dripping like poison. "Do not say I did not warn you." And then he was gone, vanishing into the silence of the corridor. Jafari stood trembling, his back pressed against the closed door, his breath ragged. The echo of Malik's words coiled through him like smoke, seeping into places he wished they could not reach. His first thought was to run to Senkatara, to tell him everything. But the king was away, attending matters of state. And even if he were here, Jafari's heart ached with the knowledge he would not believe him, not anymore. Alone in the darkness, Jafari slid down the door until he was crouched on the cold stone, his face buried in his hands. He had never felt so powerless, so unseen. And there in the silence, a cruel thought surfaced. Was this worth it? Was his love for Senkatara truly worth the torment Malik had brought into his life? Or was he clinging to a love already lost? Should he fight until he bled, or count his losses now and leave before Malik destroyed him completely? The questions pressed down on him like a weight he could not shake. And for the first time, Jafari did not know the answer. The dawn was pale, the sky washed in muted silver when Jafari left the palace behind. His steps carried him to the familiar path that led to the school for princes and princesses, the place where so many royals across Sudan and beyond had been shaped into leaders. He walked quickly, garment tight around his shoulders, his thoughts restless and raw from the night before. Malik's words, his chilling touch, the threat still clung to him like a stain he could not scrub away. And beneath it all was the ache of knowing that if he told Senkatara, he would only be dismissed again. The school stood solemn and timeless, its stone walls veined with ivy, its high windows glinting with morning light. Within its courtyard, students' voices echoed faintly, though they were not yet at lessons. Jafari went straight to the chambers of the mentor, the man whose counsel had always been steady as the earth. The mentor sat cross-legged on a woven mat, scrolls spread before him. His lined face lifted when Jafari entered, and at once the old man saw the turmoil in his eyes. He gestured for him to sit. Jafari did not hesitate. He poured out everything. The strange moments since Malik's return, the name whispered in the dark, the way Mosi had seen Malik wandering where he should not have been, the mocking obscenity at the window, the cold threat in his chamber the night before. As he spoke, his hands shook, his voice at times breaking with disbelief, with fear, with fury. When at last he finished, the room went silent. The mentor leaned back, stroking his white beard, eyes distant. For a long time he said nothing, his gaze turned inward as though searching a path through memory. "Say something," Jafari urged, voice rough. "Tell me I am not losing my mind." The old man looked at him then, steady and grave. "You are not losing your mind. You had every right to be worried." Relief and dread collided in Jafari's chest. He leaned forward. "Then what is it? What is happening here?" But the mentor only grew still again, his brow furrowed in thought. His silence stretched until Jafari could no longer bear it. "What are you thinking?" he pressed. The mentor's voice came slowly, measured. "When I came to the palace a while ago, I felt it. An unease in the air, a stirring I could not name. And now, with what you have told me, Malik reminds me of someone." Jafari's eyes widened. "Who?" The mentor's gaze drifted as though looking far into the past. "A student of mine, long ago. He was not noble-born, but clever enough to win a place here. Restless, angry. He carried in him a bitterness that no kindness could soothe. He whispered often of the royal family, dark things, threats. And then one day, he vanished, gone, as though swallowed by the earth itself." The silence after his words pressed heavy on the air. Jafari swallowed hard. "And you think he has something to do with Malik?" The mentor closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, ancient and unreadable. "I am not sure yet. The resemblance is not of face, but of presence. A shadow I cannot quite place. I need more time." More time, but time was the one thing Jafari felt they did not have. He left the school with his chest tighter than when he had come, his mind full of questions and his heart carrying even more fear than before. The great hall was lit with warm light, shadows flickering across stone walls. Servants moved quietly as they set steaming dishes of roasted meat, rice, and spiced vegetables upon the table. For the first time since his return, Malik was present at dinner. He came without hesitation, his white tobe gleaming, his posture upright, his gray eyes calm. To anyone watching, he might have seemed like a man merely stepping back into the rhythm of his old life. But for Jafari, the sight of him seated at the table made his stomach twist. The family was gathered, Senkatara at the head, regal and composed, Jafari at his side, shoulders stiff with unease, little Mosi fidgeting in his seat, and Malik across from them, serene, as though he had always belonged. Dinner began in silence. Forks scraped against plates. The crackle of the fire seemed louder than usual. Mosi kicked his legs idly beneath the table, the only soul unbothered by the weight pressing down on the room. Halfway through the meal, Malik leaned slightly forward, his eyes softening as they rested on the boy. "And you must be Mosi," he said gently. "I have heard so much about you." The words were simple, harmless to any ear, but Jafari's blood surged hot. His fork clattered to the plate as he snapped, "Do not talk to my son." The air froze. Mosi's wide eyes darted between them, unsure. Senkatara's brow furrowed. Malik leaned back in his chair, tilting his head with mild surprise, then an amused flicker. "Jafari," the Dark King said, his voice edged with warning. "You're overreacting." He only said hello. But Jafari's jaw tightened, his voice low and steady. "I said, he does not speak to my son. He does not look at him, not ever." Malik raised his hands in mock surrender, eyes rolling. "Very well," he said lightly. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "Strange, though, that you guard him so fiercely now. Wasn't it you who left him behind years ago, and now you sit here playing Father of the Year?" The words hit Jafari like a slap. His fingers curled into fists, his breath sharp. Malik turned again, his voice soft, deceptively kind, as he addressed Mosi. "Be careful, little one. Fathers who leave once can always leave again." That was the spark. Jafari's chair scraped against the floor as he surged up, lunging across the table with fire in his eyes. His hand drew back, ready to strike Malik across the face. But before the blow could land, Senkatara was there. The Dark King's grip clamped around Jafari's arm, halting him mid-strike. "Enough!" Senkatara's voice thundered through the hall. Jafari stared at Senkatara, breathing hard, waiting, hoping for the scolding to turn on Malik, for his king to finally see. But instead, Senkatara's eyes bore into Jafari alone. "Calm yourself, Jafari." Malik meant no harm. The words hollowed Jafari out. He froze, searching his beloved's face for any glimmer of doubt, any sign he had seen the cruelty for what it was. But there was nothing. Blind trust. It was as if every moment they had shared, every truth they had built together, had been erased in an instant. The man who once stood by him through storms now stood against him, and the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. Malik smirked behind his lowered lashes, his lips twitching faintly in satisfaction. Dinner ended in silence, the food left untouched. Jafari gathered Mosi into his arms, holding him tight against his chest as he left the hall. His fury trembled beneath his skin, but more than that was the ache of despair. The lamps at the table burned on, but to Jafari, it felt as though the world had dimmed. That night, sleep would not come to Jafari. He lay restless, mind thrashing like a trapped bird. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Malik smirk across the dinner table, heard his poisonous words dripping into Mosi's ears. The memory burned so hot, he thought it might set the bed aflame. At last something tugged at him, an instinct, a whisper. "Check on Mosi." Jafari rose, pulling a robe about his shoulders, and padded softly through the corridor. The lanterns along the walls flickered, shadows bending across the stone. His heart beat faster the closer he drew to his son's chamber, though he could not say why. When he pushed the door open, his breath caught. Malik was sitting on Mosi's bed. Mosi lay curled in sleep, innocent and unaware, while Malik sat poised beside him, gray eyes fixed on the boy's face. His posture was casual, almost serene, as though he had every right to be there. Rage boiled in Jafari's chest, but he would not wake his son into this nightmare. He moved silently, swiftly, seized Malik by the collar of his white robe and yanked him from the bed. With barely controlled fury, he dragged him out into the hallway, far from Mosi's room, and slammed him against the stone. "What in the name of the gods do you think you are doing in my son's room?" Jafari hissed. His fist connected hard with Malik's face, the crack echoing down the hall. "Keep your foul hands from my son, you cursed creature!" Blood welled at Malik's nose. He lifted a hand, wiped it lazily, and laughed, low, chilling. "I warned you," Malik murmured, his smile cruel. "I told you that if you stayed, things would get bad. This is what I meant." Jafari's chest heaved. "Threaten me all you like, but if you ever lay a hand on Mosi, I swear I will kill you with my bare hands." Malik tilted his head, eyes glittering like shards of ice. "Oh, I won't need to lay a hand on him." "But accidents happen, don't they? Children wander, children fall, and when they do, people say it is fate." The word snapped the last thread of Jafari's restraint. With a roar, he struck again. His fists pummeled Malik's face again and again, fueled by terror, by fury, by the primal instinct of a father. Malik did not fight back. He only laughed at first, then groaned, then curled as though he were helpless prey beneath the blows. But Jafari knew. He knew Malik could defend himself if he wished. That knowledge made the sight of Malik's passivity more terrifying than any resistance. Still, Jafari did not stop until his own knuckles screamed in pain, until his breath was ragged and sweat slicked his brow. "Jafari!" The Dark King's voice thundered down the hall. A moment later, Senkatara seized Jafari by the shoulders, yanking him back. Fury blazed in his eyes as he looked from Jafari to Malik. Malik lay sprawled on the floor, his face bloodied, his lips trembling. His eyes glistened with tears as he whimpered, "Help me, Senkatara. He attacked me. I did nothing. He just attacked me." The sound of Malik's voice, broken, wounded, pitiful, was convincing, heartbreakingly so. Senkatara's expression hardened, his jaw tight as iron. He pulled Jafari back another step. "What have you done?" the Dark King demanded. "He was in Mosi's room," Jafari spat, his voice raw, frantic. "He was sitting on his bed, watching him sleep." "Enough!" Senkatara roared. His face was carved from stone, his eyes cold. "This is the last straw. I told you to leave Malik alone. I told you again and again, and now you strike him like some madman?" Jafari stared at Senkatara in disbelief, his mouth falling open. "You can't be serious. You believe him over me. Senkatara, open your eyes. He was in our son's room. He... Enough!" Senkatara's tone cut like a blade. His arm moved around Malik, helping him carefully from the floor, brushing the blood from his cheek with a tenderness that shattered Jafari's heart. "You will pack your things," Senkatara said to Jafari without turning back. "By dawn, you and your son will be gone from this palace. You are no longer welcome here." The words landed like a death sentence. Jafari stood frozen, broken, watching as the man he loved walked away with Malik leaning against him, playing the victim to perfection. The sound of their retreating footsteps echoed down the corridor, leaving Jafari alone in the dark, banished in his own heart before the exile even began. Jafari stood for a long moment in the corridor, the sting of Senkatara's command still ringing in his ears, Malik's false tears still echoing in his mind. His hands throbbed from striking the man, his chest heaved, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was Mosi. The image would not leave him, Malik perched on his son's bed, watching the child sleep as if he owned the right. That sight had burned itself into Jafari's bones, and with it came the chilling knowledge. This was no longer about love, nor betrayal, nor even heartbreak. This was about his son's safety. He could not risk another night under that roof. Moving quickly, he returned to Mosi's chamber. The boy slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that had nearly touched him. Jafari's heart squeezed painfully at the sight. He pressed a hand to Mosi's shoulder and whispered, "Wake up, little warrior. We have to go." Mosi stirred, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Papa, where are we going?" "On an adventure," Jafari whispered with a small, strained smile. He gathered a few of the boy's belongings, clothes, his toy lion, the carved flute, and then went to his own chamber to pack what little he needed. His movements were swift, practiced. He did not think about what he left behind, the bed once shared, the clothes hung in carved cupboards, the life he had built within those walls, the promise he had made not to give up on Senkatara. None of it mattered now, only Mosi. Before long, father and son slipped through the palace gates into the night. The lanterns at the gate flickered, the guards bowing low as they passed, unaware of the desperation driving Jafari's actions. On the road, Mosi's small hand clutched his father's as they neared the school for princes and princesses, where Jafari knew they would find safety with the mentor. "Papa," Mosi said again, his voice soft in the darkness, "where are we going?" Jafari squeezed his hand gently. "We're going on an adventure, son. Somewhere safe, somewhere new. Will Papa Senkatara come?" Jafari's throat tightened, but he forced a calm smile. "No, little warrior. Not now. This is just you and me." The boy nodded, satisfied, trusting. He leaned his head against his father's side, clutching his toy lion, as though this truly was some secret midnight quest. And Jafari, though his heart was breaking, felt a single strand of peace. For now, at least, his son was safe. The gates of the school for princes and princesses closed quietly behind them. The night was still, the air cool with the scent of jacaranda blossoms. The mentor was waiting. He did not ask questions, not yet, only opened his arms and welcomed Jafari and Mosi inside. Mosi was soon settled in a warm bed, curled safely beneath soft blankets. The boy clutched his wooden lion close, his face peaceful in sleep. Jafari stood over him for a long while, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Only when he was certain the child was beyond the reach of dreams did he turn away. The mentor offered him a chamber. It was modest, with a simple bed, a low table, and a single lamp flickering against the plastered walls. Jafari sat on the edge of the bed, his back straight, his hands gripping his knees. For a long moment, he stared at the floor, willing the storm in his chest to quiet. It did not. The first sob tore through him like a wound, reopening, sudden and unstoppable. He bent forward, burying his face in his hands, and the tears came. He wept for his love, for the man who had once held him with such devotion, who had sworn to love him until their hair was gray and their bodies bent with age. That man felt gone now, replaced by a stranger with Malik's shadow cast over him. He wept for his future, for the wedding that would not be, for the home they had built together that no longer felt like his. It stung, bitter and sharp, to be cast out by the very man he had given his heart to. He wept for Senkatara too, because he knew in his soul that this was not natural, that something dark had wrapped itself around the king and twisted him into this cold stranger. Jafari's chest ached with helplessness, knowing the man he loved was in danger, knowing Malik had something to do with it, yet not knowing how to save him. He cried until his face was swollen and hot, until his breath came in ragged gasps and his body felt hollowed out. At last, when the tears slowed, he whispered into the silence, his voice hoarse. "I will not leave you, Senkatara. Not truly. Whatever this is, whatever he has done to you, I will find a way to break it." But even as resolve coiled faintly in his heart, the hurt did not loosen. It pressed down on him, heavy as stone. And so that night, Jafari let himself drown in grief. His body curled on the narrow bed until exhaustion pulled him into a restless sleep. That same night, the palace was hushed, the corridors dark and echoing. The lanterns along the walls had burned low, their dim light casting long trembling shadows, leaving the air heavy with smoke and silence. In the guest chambers where the dark king now slept, the world was still. Until the door opened, bare feet padded across the floor. Malik slipped inside like a shadow, the soft rustle of fabric the only sound he made. His robe slid down just enough to blur the line between clothed and bare. His movements slow, deliberate. His gray eyes never left the figure on the bed. Senkatara lay on his side, crown and robe set aside, chest rising and falling in the rhythm of deep sleep. Unarmored, unaware. Malik's smile curved, not in tenderness, but in possession. He climbed onto the bed as silently as mist, each motion smooth, practiced, a predator approaching its prey. The mattress dipped beneath his weight. He leaned over the king, close enough that the heat of his body radiated through the cool air. Senkatara stirred. His lashes fluttered, his breath caught. He opened his eyes to find Malik above him, a silhouette framed by the dying lantern light, close enough that their breaths mingled. Malik! His voice was thick with sleep, confusion lacing the single word. His mouth parted, perhaps to protest, perhaps to yield. Malik bent lower, his face inches from Senkatara's, and brushed his fingers slowly across the king's chest, tracing lines meant to make his intent unmistakable. His body shifted with practiced intimacy, closing the space between them, making refusal harder with every heartbeat. His voice came out low, coaxing and dangerous. "I've waited long enough," he whispered. "All those years, all those nights, you remember, don't you?" Senkatara's throat worked, but no sound came. His hands twitched at his sides, uncertain, resist or yield. Malik's smile widened, the heat in his gaze edged with something sharp, something that made the air around them feel too tight. "Shh," he whispered, the word a blade wrapped in silk. The chamber grew heavy, thick with possibility. Would the king push Malik away? Would he surrender to what once was? Or had the choice already been stolen from him?